And today we are going to be talking about becoming coachable, and it's really about this book. Let me get rid of the background on my screen. Hold on one second, Blair. It's really about becoming coachable. And this book is by Scott Osman, Jacqueline Lane, and Marshall Goldsmith. And really, the content of this session comes from their work in this book. And it's like a guide that explores how leaders can be open and really become more of themselves and open themselves up to coaching, feedback, and growth. My goal today is not to just tell you their ideas, but really to help us reflect on how you can apply them in your own leadership context. But um, I will say there's so much more in this book than I'm going to be able to get to today. And so I'm basically doing just like a little taste, a little teaser of it. And so I would recommend getting this book. It's one of those that I also have tabbed. And before we also really start, I do want to say this is about, executive coaching. Um, I am certified, Anita's certified, Jason's certified, Lane's working his way to being certified. So we are ready to help you in any way that you need. And so we are executive coaches. All right. So before we start today, I really want to just see, how are you today? One, you're barely there, you're barely hanging on. It is a Wednesday and we are ready for the week to be done. But five, you are pumped, ready to go. I will be honest with y'all. Today I'm sitting at about a two. Yeah. Kind of looks like most of us are sitting about a 2 to 3, kind of in the middle. But I am really excited for those that are in a five today. Thank you for giving some feedback. We're at a 3.4, so um, I am hoping that today will be a great day and that all of us that are in that 2 to 3 can move on up. And if you're at a five, you're just staying at a five and really being pumped all day. So, why does coachability matter? Well, in the book, the authors make it clear that being coachable isn't about some abstract term. It's not just nice to have. It is really a differentiator between those great leaders and those leaders um, that are, you know, not the best leaders maybe. So they say that many leaders are good in the sense that they maintain steady teams, they are, achieving that decent growth. But those who really recognize the power of being open and being vulnerable to learning and feedback and change are those leaders that are coachable, and it differentiates them from the ones that are just good and it makes them great. So great leaders are not just successful, they keep growing. They know that you are not stagnant in your leadership, but you're also willing to get better at things. You're willing to grow. And being coachable is being open and having the openness to learn new things, to accept feedback. That's the actively seeking and receiving feedback from your peers, from your bosses, from the people who you lead. And then it's also action. So it's doing something in response. Good leaders maintain steady teams, but great leaders recognize that the secret to achieving their effectiveness is becoming coachable. And I'm really curious to know where we are today. So, on a scale of 1 to 5, how coachable would you be? How coachable do you rate yourself? 1, not very. 5, very. Or we've got some 3s, 4s, 5s. And really, what does being coachable mean to you? You can put that in the chat. And whenever I think of being coachable, it really is about that openness, that vulnerability, that we know we don't know everything, and we're having this growth mindset, accepting and understanding. Yeah. So, what are some signs of a coachable leader? Before I move on, I can be taught, trained to do almost anything anything if the teacher is effective, willing to do the work, willing to listen, learn, and pivot when needed. Yeah, love all of these. And I completely agree. You're willing to listen, you're willing to learn, and you're willing to pivot because we may be heading one way, but we may know, hey, that's not going to work right now in this situation. And so being willing and able to pivot when needed is really going to be beneficial. Not taking feedback is an attack on my competency or knowledge, not being hurt by it. Woo, that's a big one because I feel like I struggle with that, where it's like, oh, they just don't like me, you know? Um, or that, okay, they say I need to get better at this, and so obviously I'm just stupid. That's it. That's the only thing that could be possible. And so I for sure am one of those that um whenever I'm taking feedback, I'm like, hey, it's not personal. And one of the things, I don't know if y'all have heard of the 4 agreements, but the second agreement is like, it's not about you. It's whatever happens, it's really not personal. And so also keeping that in mind whenever we are thinking about these. Thanks, Anita. So in this book, the authors don't just say that to be coachable, um, they really express and describe what it looks like in practice to be coachable. So for example, if you are a coachable leader, if this will go, live with humility and curiosity. A coachable leader recognizes that they don't know it all and they're open to learning. So that humility comes in, but they're also really curious and they want to know more. They are actively seeking feedback and they view it as a gift. So feedback is a gift rather than just being critical. It is rather than avoiding criticism, they invite it and they see it as a path to improvement. They accept that they don't have all the answers. I don't know about you, but I know that I don't know the answers. I don't know all the answers. And as a leader, your team also knows that you don't know all the answers, and that's okay. If you think you know all the answers, your team's probably going to see right through it. And you really just need to know it's okay. You might be the leader, but there's other people who might be more experienced or they might be more of an expert in certain situations, and that is totally fine. They translate that feedback into concrete action. So they're taking that action. Coachability is not just about hearing feedback, but it's really about translating that feedback into a behavior change, into something that improves you, um, and you're really working on improvement and that growth. So really, let's take about 30 seconds right now and think about someone you know or yourself who exemplifies one of these signs. What do they do? What did they do that showed coachability? And you can either put it in the chat or just write it down. Either way is fine. I know that we have a coachable leader, or I feel like we have a coachable leader because Jason is constantly seeking feedback. He's always wondering how he can improve his leadership. He's always wondering what roadblocks he's putting in our ways and where he can kind of step back. He's also one that accepts that they don't have all the answers. And if he doesn't have an answer, he's going to try to find it. But he's also willing to just be vulnerable and say, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. And I feel like he really does live with humility and curiosity. So it's really nice to have a coachable leader because that sets an example for how we can lead and how we can be. So let's talk about the coachability framework. And when we're thinking about a framework, this really is the framework that the three authors use for becoming coachable. And we're going to just take a quick walk through each of these steps. So the first is to prepare your mindset to be open and self-aware. So this means recognizing your strengths, but it also means recognizing your blind spots and being open to the change and really focusing on the reflection of who you really are. The second is to create a safe environment. Coachability often depends on having trust, having that openness and the feedback, all of those in like a loop, both personally and in your team and your organization. And so having that safe framework allows us to have the openness, allows us to be vulnerable and solicit feedback without taking it as an attack on our competency or knowledge and not being hurt by it, not taking it personal. The third one is to partner with the right coach or mentor. There are so many coaches out there. And when you know you have the right coach, you're going to have that safe environment. You're going to really just be able to bounce off of each other. You're going to have someone that is aligned with your goals, your values, the style that you prefer. And so finding that person is great. I know that there's people who will interview coaches and maybe even take on a couple different coaches, like as trials, so they can see who they better align with. And then the fourth one is to really translate insight into action. So taking all the feedback and the coaching and the work, like all of that won't matter unless you act, unless you have that action. So we have that accountability, we have measurable goals, we have behavior change that we can see, and we are following through on the feedback that we've gotten. So what are some roadblocks? Because we all have roadblocks. We all have things that will make us stumble, especially whenever we are coachable. And so this book identifies several roadblocks, and there's more than even I'm going to go over. But the first one is fear of vulnerability or being judged. We might avoid feedback because we don't want to be seen as weak, we don't want to be exposed, we don't want to be vulnerable or be judged, and so we just don't do it. We avoid the feedback at all costs. Some have a belief that I'm already good enough. I don't need to be coached. I don't need to improve because I'm already there. And that mindset really stops growth. When you think you don't need feedback, you're already stuck because you don't have that growth mindset in order to keep on proving. And we might be good enough right now, but there will come a time when you still need to improve. You still need to grow. You still need to be curious and have that vulnerability to improve and make the best of your team. You want your teammates to continue to grow and to be getting better at wherever they want to go. So we also need to be reflective on the fact that we also should be growing. Feedback sometimes triggers that defensiveness. And this comes back to what Aaron said about taking it as an attack on our competency or knowledge and also not being hurt by it. So sometimes this feedback that we get, it triggers, that fight or flight mode in us, and we get defensive. We receive the feedback, we get defensive, and then nothing changes. And so that is a common roadblock that some of us may stumble. No clear action or follow through. There are times when we get the insight, but we don't translate it into anything that is going to require us to change. We hear it and then nothing else happens. Now, there are some times that we receive feedback and we get to choose what we do with that feedback. Not all feedback is going to be feedback that requires us to change. And it may just be something that we hear and we don't. But if you're constantly hearing the feedback, and as you're going through and you're working with a coach, and this is something that you really want to work on, no clear action or follow through is a roadblock. So being coachable means being open to feedback, willing to learn, and ready to adapt. This is from one of the authors of the book. So next, let's move from insight to action. So here's a simple step-by-step plan inspired by the book that you can apply immediately. So this is your coachability action plan. The first is to identify a growth area. This could be a mindset that you have, a skill that you want to improve, or a behavior that you want to change. Choose one of those, and you can really focus on that growth area in your coachability plan. Seek feedback from at least one trusted person. So this is going to be that person that's going to actually give you honest feedback. They're not going to try to sugarcoat it. They're not going to not try to hurt your feelings, but they're actually going to give you honest feedback. And this also requires you to have trust and build a relationship with this person. Create one concrete action step this week. What specific behavior do you want to change this week to improve? And then set a check-in. This could be with yourself. This could be with a coach. This could be with a mentor. Just set a check-in date for 30 days or however long you want. And it could be a self-reflection or with a coach, but just see how you're doing. And then reflect and adjust after 60 days. Now, if you have a coach, they may have different strategies that they want to do with you. And so work with your coach, but this is really, if you don't have a coach, you can do something like this to really just look at what's wrong, what's working, what's not, and then check in with your coaching plan. So this is really just a reflection for yourself. What is one insight you're going to take away today? What are you wanting to work on? What is one small change you'll start this week? Who will you ask for feedback from? Anyone can become more coachable. It's really just a journey. You don't ever just become coachable and that's it. You become coachable and you continuously are learning and becoming more and more coachable. So I do want to take, I know it was a little bit shorter today, but I do want to take just a little bit of time to say thank you. Remember, this is about the book, Becoming Coachable, and it's really about unleashing the power of executive coaching to transform your leadership and life. And so that is all I have for you today. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you next time.